Hi, I'm Thomas Hayat with H2O. Welcome to the Compass Part 2. Sun is out. Today is going to be an amazing moment. I hope I get it in the right order for the presentation. So my story began at PCC, and in a writing class, nonfiction writing, I noticed, because I always was interested in astrology, the seating arrangement based on the signs of the students with the map of the planetary arrangement of that day. And I kept track of it and I kept investigating. That started off in September of 2017, Jupiter in Libra. And in my math class, we had a group assignment that was SAD, seasonal affective disorder. And so I made a paper on that with graphs and a QR code and even links for other apps to use to figure all this out. And I tried to explain it from a planetary perspective. The thing was, my instructor was a Gemini, so governed by Mercury, which is very close to the sun, and therefore his perspective was very narrow-minded, close range, and that made him panic when I started presenting that. And in fact, I remember that day somebody was behind me as I was presenting on the board, and he was sitting behind that person, and he kept interrupting me as I was trying to explain. And that person that was behind me, a student, said shut up or something in that line, and the instructor thought it was me. So he evacuated the entire class and took me to the dean based on prejudice or what he thought was. Well, anyway, I'm not, this is not about politics or whatever. It's about the good thing that I gathered over there. And he did introduce me to some good things too. It's just we have good and bad depending on where our perception is at. So let's get us back to what this is all about originally. It's about the exposition of each country as the sun shines upon it, right? And the earth rotates on itself. It's not the sun that's rotating around the earth, it's the earth that is rotating on itself. And the sun, in astrology, when astrologers tell you, oh, the sun is in Taurus, I'm using that reference too so that you don't get confused because that's how you were trained to understand these things. But technically speaking, the sun was in Pisces the whole era of Pisces. That was its position within the Milky Way galaxy when you draw a huge zodiac wheel, the size of the Milky Way galaxy. And he just entered into Aquarius, and the sun is going to remain in Aquarius for 2,166 years. And it entered on March 20, I don't want to say mistake, so you might want to check it out, 23rd or 27th, with the entry of Pluto inside of Aquarius, which represents the ideal and the slowest moving parts of our zodiac. So, having presented that, I want to move you to understand that this has a iron core inside, right? And it generates a magnetic field that goes this way, right? Everywhere. And this magnetic field can be affected if there is a solar storm, or if there is a huge gas giant with a huge magnetosphere not too far from it, and that will affect it greatly. So let me show you how on a small scale we can demonstrate how magnets and can affect a compass. I can't really see the screen here, so I don't know which height I'm at, but I hope it's visible. This is a tiny little magnet from ACE hardware, and this is a compass, which, by the way, for children, don't ever put your compass behind your magnet behind the compass, because you'll break it. And so here's a demonstration. You see how the needle just moves around as if the magnet was the moon, right? And so if I go much slower and I use that as if it was Jupiter instead of the moon, here you see how the needle is vertical and pointing to Aries, and then I'm going to take it down to Taurus, Gemini, and then perpendicular would be Cancer, Capricorn, right? So that's vertical relationship of water, horizontal relationship of water and earth versus vertical relationship of air and fire. And with that same principle, I'm going to show you that I mounted some magnets because magnetic energy, and let me put the camera back up here quickly to explain this. Maxwell's equation, which dates back to the Civil War, explains that magnetic energy and light energy is one and the same frequency. So that means when the Earth is pointing away from the sun, doesn't mean it's not receiving energy. It's just receiving the energy from the outer planets, which you cannot see visibly if you look out there. But if you were to live at the poles, you would see it as a light display of aurora borealis. And so with that same magnet, I took a bunch of tiny little magnets and arranged them in a letter configuration on one of my zodiac wheels to demonstrate a point. You see how the same thing that I did with the wheel, oops, let me orient it properly. The same thing that I did with the wheel, the needle vertically, I can do horizontally with this. This magnet is not strong enough. Let me take this one. There you go. I'll do a better demonstration with the other thing. I should probably do this inside because it's not very practical for me to hold both of those things like this. So I'll pause. Let me see, where's the pause button? Right here. Okay, we're back like magic, but indoors this time. Now, what I was saying about the story starting in 2017, there is a artist who makes glass art, and his name is Dale Shioley, and he shared his story about his bipolar disorder with his wife, and he started in 2017, and he explained pretty much more or less in the story how every 6 months and every 6 years it kicks back on. And so I wanted to address that because I also was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, but in 1997, the first time, and that was when Jupiter was in Aquarius, which is normally where I had the sun there at my birth. So you could call that a reverse function. So what I first showed in the first video about the X and Y axis, you would reverse the Y and X axis, excuse me, and so put the Jupiter where the sun was and the sun where Jupiter was. And that's what causes bipolar disorder, not some chemical imbalance inside the brain that I've been subjugated to take pills for over 20 years, and which has totally screwed up my digestive system. And none of the doctors are taking any accountabilities because people who do science do not study every science. They study one field and take no accountability for the rest. So anyway, that's another side note. We have in the center the Pythagoras wheel, which I showed before, right? Now I want to show you something. This is my birth chart. I was born with Jupiter in Aries, that little blue dot right here. The moon in Libra, opposite to it. Uranus in Scorpio. And the sun in Aquarius right here in the very beginning. Now, this is Saturn in Cancer. Saturn normally governs the opposite sign, which is Capricorn. So right there I have a polarity. The moon normally governs Cancer. That's 90 degrees. So right there I have a reverse function again, XY. Okay? Those things are at birth. It's not by shoving people full of pills that you're gonna change their God-made blueprint, you know? So anyway, this is my birth chart, and this is what could have ended up being my death chart. That was November 5th, 2022. That was just last year. November 5th was exactly 6 months ago. And last year, Jupiter was in Pisces, year of the tiger, and Pisces is end of cycle. My mother was born with Jupiter there. I'll get in the details of that later, but you can see that Uranus is opposite to where it was when I was born, right here in Taurus, right now. And the sun was in Scorpio on the 5th, which is perpendicular to where my original thing is. and somebody tried to kill me with a ball peen hammer, and I got a scar up there that's about this big from the hit. I barely made it home, and I crashed in my bed. And I slept for about 30 hours or so. My bed was covered in blood, and I took a shower. Anyway, I'll spare you the details. So I guess this video is not for kids. But anyway, I want to mention something else about this book, the Acquiring Gospel of Jesus Christ, particularly from page 58 to 60. 60 is the common denominator where decimal and this 12 standard Egyptian system meet. 12 times 5 is 60. 5 is the house of Leo, so it's following the sun. And 6 times 10 is 60. And 6 times 10 follows Saturn, because Saturn takes 30 years for each orbit. And if you really think about it, the rings of Saturn also play a similar role to those of Uranus, which I explained yesterday, in that 60 years ago, so 2 orbits ago, the Russians had missiles at our doorsteps in Cuba. That was the Cuban Missile Crisis. You wait 2 orbits later, and now it's our missiles at their doorstep that is about to trigger another problem. So let me put this aside and show you. For the longest years, each scientist, whether it was a psychiatrist, a mathematician, I lost a astronomy friend who is a director assistant for the National French Research thingy. She didn't even want to look at what I had to present. And so searching, I finally figured it out, because now I can actually demonstrate for real. I'm going to take this out because we know we're talking about a circle, and I just wanted to make sure that we're talking about the same reference. And I made some cutout with the magnets arranged where I have the moon, which is represented here. Here, I'll show you. I put the moon here. I put the sun in Aquarius, the moon in Libra, Saturn in Cancer, and Jupiter in Aries, where I have it on my chart, as I just showed you a little bit earlier. And I put the Earth in the center because it's a geocentric system in astrology, in spite of what I explained outside. On the wheel, you can see the Earth is on the center. The Greek alphabet is wrapped twice, 24 letters wrapped twice, right? To keep track of night and day. And around that is the Chinese Qigong gates, which are the gates of energy around Earth, which they figured out already a long time ago. I think it was under Emperor Yahoo, 2256 BC. So anyway, let's put Jupiter back in Aries where the head is at, and the sun in Aquarius where it was when I was born, and see what happens. So I'm going to take something, a little device that I made that kind of looks like the rings of Uranus or Saturn, right? And I'm going to do exactly that. Make the 12-year orbit of Jupiter happen under your eyes in just seconds, right? And so what that does is, let me place it like this. In 2017, I was at PCC, and I was overburdened with, like everybody knows, college is overburdening with homework and all that. And so that makes the house life more difficult. And that caused me a bunch of trouble, which I won't get into the details of here. But anyway, that was due to this reverse polarity, right? And so if instead of Jupiter, you're governed by something like the moon, then you're going to have this reverse polarity every 28 days. Every time the moon, instead of being at its governing point, it ends up at Libra. That's going to throw you off for 2.5 days, because that's the time it takes per house. And then by the time it makes it to Capricorn again, it's going to be your opposite to where it's at. That's going to make you feel funky. So the point of all this is, right now, all the governors, each planet, are not where they're supposed to be. Because normally, Uranus, which is this one, that's the symbol for it, governs Aquarius. When I was born, it was in Scorpio, right? And which is 90 degrees relative to that. And now it is in Taurus, and it has been for about 5 or 6 years. It takes 7 years per house, right? So that is 90 degrees relative to where it was. And for me, in my personal configuration, I'm opposite. So I'm kind of okay with it. For people who had it here, they feel funky. So we have Uranus that's here. The Sun, which I'll use this to represent the Sun, and Jupiter both, but one at a time. The Sun, which normally governs Leo, so that would be here. We're in May, it's over here, 90 degrees relative to its original position. And Pluto, which normally governs Scorpio, the fourth cardinal fixed sign, instead of being in Scorpio, has done his 248-year orbit and is now in Aquarius. So 248 years ago, that's when this country became a country, kind of, you know? And before I close this video, because I don't want this one to be too long, otherwise they take forever to upload, I just want to make a quick introduction on how I got to the alphabet the first time around. It was because, oops, here we go. Put the camera this way to have the light in the right direction. Okay. It was because my friend Emily was in calligraphy in the same art building. I was taking ceramics, drawing, and other classes. And so doing the astrology and thinking about calligraphy, that's where things started to pop, given that in 2017 I started seeing the beginning of name, especially Mohammed, whom I met the preceding year, and he was born with Jupiter in Virgo, just like 2016. And so it's all those intercept that got me to thinking, oh, and you too, and you too, and you too. Oh, okay, now I'm starting to see where it clicks. And so I started by putting the alphabet on the Greek zodiac, starting at A with Aries, B with the bull Taurus, C, D, so on. By the time I made it to L, which was the 12th letter, and I would run out of space, I simply put the M back in Aries and then continued on until I ran out of letters. And I did the same thing with the Chinese zodiac, which their number one, according to their mythology, is the rat. And so A, B, C, etc., etc. And the thing is, to find how the two zodiac match, you're going to need an astrolabe, which is a tool that you can find on Google. You can type Alab Astrolabe, and it'll give you, you type a date and so on, and it'll give you the position of Jupiter at a given year. So if we're in 2023, and we're looking right now, for example, we will see that the Chinese call it the year of the hare, and if I align the two, then both of my wheels are now aligned, right? And so in doing that, that's how I got this, okay? Which it's important to know, because that's how the Astropoly game works. Even though I based it the second time around off of the compass, it's because astrology relates to everything. So that's why. But I'll stop it there. I hope you enjoyed this, because I was up till 2 a.m. trying to figure out which letter arrangement works best. And that's why there's N and W, the letters that they are. I'll have to research when magnets were first invented, because I'm curious about that now. Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend and take it easy. And don't forget to pass this along, because like Chief Sitting Bull of the Lakota tribe used to say, knowledge is worthless until it is passed on. Take care.